Alan Young. Alan Young for the brokers.
Well, you know, we haven't taken any of those remarks by the opposition personally. We'd just be devastated if we did. We came here in good spirits, and the point for everyone to remember is this: our opponents are putting the proposition that property is better than shares. If you believe that property isn't, you have to vote for us. If you believe that there's a doubt in your mind about whether it is or it isn't, you have to vote for us. They've raised issues like bad days in the market, and they've talked about governments and banks. The the GFC, the global financial crisis, was born out of property in the US, but we haven't raised that. We really are not going to dwell on that. The fact of the matter is that the government invests its money for superannuation through this country into shares, and banks invest in shares. When they lend money on property and make money out of that transaction, where do they put their money? They put it in the share market. They are among the largest owners of companies listed on the stock exchange in this country. And finally, we want homes to do well. When they do well, the share market does well.
Well done, guys. Well done. Now, don't forget, if you're out there viewing, you need to vote now. Now's the time to be voting. And while we wait for those votes to come in, we've got 4 questions. 1 question for each of you, and these are from emails, and we've actually had an avalanche of emails. We've only got time for these 4. So if you're okay with it, Alan,
yep.
We'll start with you. The question is, I've noticed banks will lend against property in an overwhelming preference to shares. Why do you think this is?
Well, I don't know that it's a preference, but everyone has to have a house. It's cold out there if you don't have one, so I guess that's why they lend in the first place. Most people start with a home and then they build up and make other investments subsequently. But in the end, we're happy for that. We're happy. The more homes they lend on and the more property is constructed, the better, because the companies that construct those homes, that provide the materials in those homes, that provide the energy that fuels those homes, are companies which are listed on the stock exchange, and in the end, property is just a bunch of shares.
Thank you, Alan. That's very good. Question for Emma. A mate has several investment properties, each probably worth around $450,000, where he makes a net yield of around 3%. On the other hand, I've noticed some quality ASX listed companies, e.g. CBA, WBC, QBE, NAB, ANZ, etc. Most with gross yields above 6%. Assuming there is no capital growth over the next 5 years or so for the above shares or property, then do you agree that I would be better off buying the above shares because yields are much higher?
Well, I definitely don't agree that you should go the share option. I think you've got to think long term. The Real Estate Institute always advocates medium to long term investment, and that's the way you've got to approach any investment strategy. Whilst you might be getting the lower yield now, you've got plenty of opportunity for growth. We talked about supply and demand, and that's never going to change in housing. So you've got the scope to increase your rent as the market dictates in time to come. So in 10 years, you may have your yield being in that double-digit territory rather down in the 6% margin, and you've got the stability. You know how much rent you're going to collect a week, you know approximately what your council rates are going to be, and you know what the liability is there. So you've got much more of an opportunity to plan. So I say don't rule out property, and definitely give that a second thought.
Thank you, Emma. And the audience are impressed. It's great. And now back to the share side, Mark. This is from Paul, by the way. Now, Paul, if you're listening, you've been blogging, keeping me awake at night with your blogs, but it's been really excellent blogging. In my opinion, anyone can buy a property as an investment, regardless of their knowledge, intellect, and still make a profit. Whereas with shares, you have to know about growth, values, yields, etc. to benefit from owning shares. Therefore, isn't property the best investment, as you are guaranteed to make a profit no matter how much knowledge you have?
Well, that guarantee you talked about before is that sort of unblinded optimism, or blind optimism, which I think you can get yourself into trouble with. I think at the very least you've got to know something about the property you purchase. There's a number of things to take into consideration, so I don't think it's as easy as throwing a dart and purchasing anything on the street. Paul, I'd really love you to give me a call at Baker Young Stockbrokers, because we can discuss and help you with your share market opportunities and grow some of your investments as well. At the end of the day, the Australian Stock Exchange produces some material which is very good for to introduce new investors into the market. We understand that a number of new investors are, concerned about the swings and roundabouts as has been brought up and the different terminology that's there. But with a little education and a helping hand, you can do very well in the stock market over the longer term, and you can broaden your investment horizon and not put all your eggs in the one basket.
Great question, Paul. These questions have been really excellent, actually. Now, the final one for Greg. Greg, and this is from Eden. Property incurs stamp duty, council rates, water rates, insurance. I think I've heard this, haven't we? Almost. Did you write this?
We have.
Are you Eden?
I'm Eden.
It's all good fun. Water rates, insurance, maintenance, wear and tear, over 1.5% brokerage to sell, and at least 60 days to obtain cash from timing of placing of the house on the market. Shares means no duties, no taxes, no insurance, no maintenance, no wear and tear. Brokerage under 1%, well done, to sell only up to 7 days to obtain the cash from the time of sale. The last 10 years would have produced substantial capital gains if you purchased well-run, strong companies and would have clearly outperformed residential property returns. Though there is a chance of losing money, the positives of investing in shares far outweighs the negatives. Doesn't that make shares the better investment? From Eden.
There are always costs of holding property. I will take the cost of holding property any day over the uncertainty. And look, I'll raise that one again. The snakes and ladders, my colleague here had mentioned, you know what your council rates are and all of those sorts of things. So look, there is some certainty. The long-term investment, best investment is definitely property. Holding costs, yes, but long-term results, yes.
Right. Thank you very much, Greg. And now, the lines close in just a few minutes, so make sure you get online right now and get those buzzers going and get those votes in. While we do the count and while we find out who's going to take that coveted trophy, that first Showdown 1 trophy with them today, let's go behind the blinds, look at some great property. We'll be back in about 10 minutes to declare the winner.